Welcome to the Ask April Porter podcast, where franchisee performance meets real-world business strategy. I'm April Porter, attorney, former judge and multi-unit franchisee, and the authority on franchisee performance. Each week, I share actionable insights, proven strategies, and inspiring conversations with top entrepreneurs and franchise leaders, all to help you grow your franchise or small business to achieve what I call swag: sanity, wealth, and gratitude. Success without sacrifice. To claim your swag, apply these hard-earned lessons from seasoned entrepreneurs. We're going to do that now. Let's dive in. Today, we're visiting with Nate Littlewood, who is the founder of Future Ready CFO, where he supports early-stage, purpose-led founders in the e-commerce and CPG space achieve their business and financial goals by bringing clarity to their numbers and showing them how to use financial data to make better decisions. Welcome, Nate. We're excited to have you on the show.
Great to be here, April. Thank you very much for having me.
So you and I were having an interesting conversation offline or when we weren't being recorded, which is how it always starts with the podcast. For a behind the scenes look for all of our audience members, we can get caught up and then say, hold on a second, we need to jump on and start recording this.
Exactly.
But we were kind of just talking about the difference between bookkeepers and CFOs. And I'm not sure that a lot of small business owners really have a understanding of what that is, because so many are not in a position to need a C-suite or to be hiring at the CFO level, or so they think. So let's start there and just kind of talk about that difference that they may or may not have had experience in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the simplest way to think about it is that the role of bookkeeping and the accounting functions in your company is really to explain and classify things that have happened in the past, right? Bookkeepers put things in the right buckets in your financial statements. The accountants kind of review things periodically, and they obviously help with things, compliance related topics, whether it's corporate tax returns, sales tax returns, that sort of stuff. But where I focus is really the present, right? And that begins with ingesting everything that's happened in the past. So I want to know what the sales history looks like. I want to know what COGS looks like as a percentage of revenue. And I need to understand what the balance sheet looks like. But where I spend 90% of my time is really taking the present and then projecting it into the future. So that involves looking at, what are the fundamental drivers for growth? Like, what are we expecting in terms of volume or pricing or, our cost profile? How might that change and evolve over time? And essentially what I do is work with small business owners to help them understand more about their own business and see these financial statements as a strategic asset. The reason behind all that is that we can actually make business owners' lives a lot easier if we can look into the future and we can anticipate, the cause and effect of what might happen as a result of different initiatives. Like, we have a choice, right? We could either grow volumes by 10% or we could cut costs by 5%. Which of them is worth more to you, right? I don't know. Depends on your business. We need to do some math. We need to run the numbers. We need to look at, what's going to happen in the future. But, that's a very simple example of, the fundamental difference here, I guess.
Well, you focus primarily on e-commerce and CPG, but I'm really curious, how did you get into that niche?
So I got into this space specifically because I had previously been a business owner in that space. So I ran my own e-commerce business for about 6 or 7 years. So that just meant that I had a lot of firsthand experience. Like, I understand Shopify, I understand selling on Amazon, I understand, how to buy and finance and move inventory around. I understand what it looks like to work with, 3PLs. So it was really just a reflection of my understanding of the industry, and having served as a founder and CEO of one of these businesses before, it was the space that I was most familiar with, I guess.
I think that's pretty much how we all get here, isn't it? We did something, we had our trials and tribulations, And
Yeah.
then we realize we have an expertise and we want to help other people avoid
Yeah.
that and have a faster track to where we eventually ended up.
Indeed.
So, okay, so I see all the time small business owners or people maybe before they truly become even small business owners. Sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
characterize people as hobbyists, right? They
Yeah.
see they have a passion
Mm-hmm.
and they want to own a business. And so they
Mm-hmm.
take that passion and they start to produce it and then they
Mm-hmm.
try to sell it online.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people don't ever get over the hump of turning their hobby into a real business.
Mm-hmm.
So when
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at potential clients, how do you identify which ones have got the goods and are going to have the capability and the right product and the
Mm.
things that are going to take them or have the potential to take them to not only being a true business, but potentially into like an enterprise?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, April. So I guess I should clarify at this point that really don't start working with clients until they have achieved a stage in their life cycle called product market fit or PMF. People who've been around the startup world may have come across that term. And frankly, if you ask 10 different people what product market fit actually means, you'll probably get 10 different responses. But I'll give a very rough definition, which is that we have some reason to believe that customers actually want this product, right? And that could be because we're starting to grow volumes or sales well, we're getting great feedback. It's starting, the business or product or idea is starting to get traction. And frankly, in my opinion, that is really the earliest place that most business owners should start thinking about spending money with someone like me. If you are not yet at that point, then the most important thing for you to do as a business owner and founder is figure out how to get to that point. And any spare time, capital, resources, financial, means that you have should go towards getting to that point. So that means you need to do more sales. You might need to iterate your product. You might need to, explore different audiences and figure out how to market the product differently or better. But you can't finance your way out of a product that no one wants. No amount of financial wizardry and the best CFO in the world is going to be able to solve that problem for you, right? We need to have gotten to the point where we have something that the world actually wants and other people are willing to pay real money for. And, I tell a lot of early stage founders that, if I don't sense that they're really at that point yet, then don't waste your money with me.
Mhm.
Go and figure out product market fit, figure out how to improve the product, figure out who you're going to sell it to and how. Because if we can't get to that point, this thing's not going to survive. So it does mean that for a lot of small business owners, they'll be, working at their business for a few years. And the reality is that if you don't have someone helping you with the bookkeeping and finances for that period, that you might have a bit of an embarrassing mess in your QuickBooks Online account or Xero, whatever you're using. But you know what, April? That's okay, right? It's nothing to feel embarrassed about. Most small business owners go through that. It probably means that at some point you'll need to get someone to give you a hand and there'll be a bit of a cleanup and reconciliation project to be done, but that's okay. Like we can handle that. When you're early on, you need someone to help you with your tax returns from a compliance perspective so you don't get fined. It would be helpful if you have some basic tools like a unit economic analysis, right? So you know how much we're going to sell this for, how much is it going to cost me to produce, what does it cost me to ship or deliver or whatever else I need to do? What do the overheads look like? You need to understand that the math is like roughly going to work and that you will actually be able to make a profit on every unit sold. If you wanted to go a bit further than that, then I might recommend a simple cash flow forecast where you're basically looking at the money coming into and out of your bank account every week or every month. But really, that's all you need until you have reached product market fit. It's not until, we're at PMF stage where you can actually start tackling some of the more complicated questions where a CFO would add value, right? At that point, we have questions about, okay, how do we grow, right? Are we going to expand geographically? Are we going to expand our product line? Are we going to expand with more salespeople? Are we going to expand with different products? Like, there's a lot of options that you'll be presented with at that point. And when you have in front of you this long list of options and a lot of different directions you could go, that's when you should bring in the CFO, but really not before that.
Right. There's something we always talk about with our franchisees and small business owners, which is it's the same point in time where you're talking about.
Hmm.
But when you get to the point where it's time to invest in some of the higher level consultants that are going to really help you scale and take it to the next level, and you do
Hmm.
have that feeling of realization like, yeah, I haven't been doing this the right way and they're going to judge me. The
Mm.
reality is you do the best you can with the information you have at the time. And
Hmm.
as you grow
Hmm.
as a business owner, you're going to acquire new skills, new strategies, new intelligence that teaches you how to do it the best you can at the next phase. And then it repeats and you keep doing that over and over again. And I think that's an important message for all of our audience to hear is most of the people who are in a position like you, Nate, or like me, who we've dedicated ourselves to helping small business owners, we're not interested in judging them. We're here
Mm.
because we understand the journey and we want to help them get to the next level.
Yep. Yep. Very well said. Very well said.
Yeah. All right. So, what is your absolute favorite thing? Like some of those favorite levers that are your go-tos where you've seen big results by
Yeah.
enlightening a small business owner as to how to look at their numbers differently.
So, first thing I would mention is that there's an important transition that most business owners go through when it comes to the relationship with finances. And this relationship usually starts from, or not usually, but often starts from a state of denial, which is to say, like, I don't understand this finance numbers, mumbo jumbo nonsense. Like, it's too complicated. I don't get what all these numbers mean. So I'm just going to ignore it. Right. And the problem with that is that the numbers will go on existing whether or not you're paying attention to them. Like, they're still there. And at some point, we need to get beyond that. But what happens next is we have what I call the overwhelm phase. And this is when founders try to understand the numbers. They make an attempt, but often without the right level of support or guidance or assistance. And they get terribly confused, their head spinning, and they go back to step one or phase one. The next phase is, you
In
wanted to
your
say something?
okay, in those 2 phases, I
Yeah.
wanna stop you there because in those 2 phases, one of the things that think is true or what we find to be true is that when people don't understand the numbers and they're intimidated by the numbers, it also creates a
Hmm.
fear of the numbers. They're afraid
Yes.
that if they look at the numbers are going to tell them that they're failing.
Yes.
And so rather that I might be failing, I'm just going to put my head down, work more hours, hustle harder to try to get over the hump into quote success. And so that's all we're doing then is grinding ourselves into the ground, chasing this
Hmm.
phantom success because
Hmm.
we refuse to look at the numbers out
Yes.
of fear that we're failing. And if we would truly just take a moment, not a moment, but take some time, learn how to look at the numbers, that could be the key to unlocking that success that you've been chasing.
Incredibly well said. That was brilliant, April. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I I actually describe what you just articulated as with a concept called cognitive dissonance, which is where us humans struggle to hold two conflicting views or narratives of the same situation at the same time. It's like you can't say go around saying, "Hey, I'm a good person, but by the way, I'm also a shoplifter and I steal." Right? Like, one of those things has to be, incorrect. The way that plays out with small business owners is we want to tell our family and friends and, the whole world that we have this great company and everything's going great and it's amazing and looking at this cool product or website or store that I have. But sometimes the numbers are quietly saying, kind of suck right now. You got all these problems. And you're absolutely right. What a lot of people do, because they can't hold those two different narratives at the same time, they have to remove one of them. And the one that makes them feel better when they remove is the numbers one. And so they ignore the numbers. But where we can potentially get to, if we're willing to stick with these numbers and spend a little bit more time on it, would be phase 3. And at phase 3, I call it the intrigue phase. And this is where we start to kind of look over the fence at the financial statements and go, huh, there's actually some interesting stuff going on there. I don't fully understand it yet, but I should probably double click on some of that. It looks like there could be something I can learn from that. The final phase, which I call the enlightenment phase, is where the penny drops. That's where we go, now I get it. Now I understand what all these metrics and ratios and numbers are actually meaning. And a lot of people need a little bit of help and support to get to this point. But to your point about, the way founders and business owners often just try to hustle and grind their way out of the problems, sometimes there's just a fundamental financial mathematics problem that no amount of hustle and grind is going to fix. And so people misallocate their precious time, attention, and bandwidth trying to solve the wrong problems. And a big part of what I do as a finance coach for small business owners is I help them get focused on the right problems. I help them figure out what is the 90% of noise and nonsense that they should ignore, and what are the 2 or 3 high priority levers that they need to focus on if they want their financial desires to kind of play out.
You
That's
are
honestly
speaking my language. You're speaking
that's
my
the that's
language,
the
Nate.
hardest part of all this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the number one thing, if I were to ask 10 business owners right now, you know, are you happy with where your cash flow is? And if the answer was no, and I said, what do you think the problem is? 9, maybe 9.5 out of 10 would say, oh, my marketing, I need more leads. And when we, take a look at the numbers, which I'm sure you just know instinctually from all of the years of looking at all these businesses. And I would love to know if you agree with this or if you're seeing something different,
Mm-hmm.
that the fastest way to increase revenue in most cases is not more leads.
Mm-hmm.
It's converting more leads into customers or getting the customers you're converting to pay or purchase more things,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
getting your current customer pool to come back and purchase again. And yet all of this time, money and energy continues to be poured into the leads, and it's like a leaky bucket. You're
Mm-hmm.
pulling in more leads, but you don't have the right levers once they're in to get them to convert at a high level and do it again and again. So anyway, that's typically where we see a disconnect. I think it goes back to that kind of scarcity mindset that goes along with what you were saying with the cognitive dissonance, where
Mm-hmm.
if I perceive that I'm not doing well enough yet,
Mm-hmm.
I need more volume on the front end, right? That's what I need. And just a misunderstanding of how to look more internally, I guess, instead of
Yep.
externally in your business.
Yep. 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 Absolutely. So what you just touched on is, I'll I guess contextualize it for my world, which is a lot of business owners operate in what I call a context vacuum. And so they often don't have a great understanding when they're looking at their financials or their, customer acquisition cost or their conversion rate or whatever it is. They often don't really know what good or bad looks like for a lot of these numbers. And part of what I help them with is a benchmarking process, which is essentially comparing them to their peers so that we can get focus and we can identify where the bottleneck is or where the weak point is in the flow. You're right. For a lot of businesses, it might be conversion rate, or maybe it's the repeat customer rate, or maybe it's the average order value, or maybe it's the amount of traffic. We don't know. Like every business is likely to have a restriction or a bottleneck in a different point. So what we really need to do to get ourselves out of the context vacuum is we need to have some data and information on other businesses like us. And when we can compare ourselves to other businesses like us, that weak point or Achilles heel becomes illuminated. And that is a very powerful way to kind of guide us towards where we should be focusing our time and attention. right? Because, the definition of a bottleneck is that, it's the part that's holding up the flow in your system. And if you can remove a bottleneck in any flow, you will increase the amount of volume, in this case, revenue, profit, customers, whatever, going through the whole system. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. Unfortunately, for a lot of small business owners, they don't think that way. They don't operate that way. They have a tendency to instead focus on the part of the business that they enjoy doing the most. So if they're a designer or creator, they're probably going to have a huge SKU catalog. They have all these products, but really what the business needs is someone that can help acquire customers and sell the products. Like often, the solution to bad sales is probably not going to be more products for someone like that. We just need to get better at selling the products we have. So yeah, I absolutely hear what you're saying, and yeah, it's a real issue.
Well, it's interesting that you say that too, because one of the big things I see in franchising in particular is franchisors. I mean, talk about like what you just said. We want to look at the data from their peers, compare it, and figure out what is good, what is average, what is bad,
Mm-hmm.
so that they have some benchmarks to work off of. And
Mm-hmm.
the majority of early franchisors, which is the majority of franchisors, don't
Mm-hmm.
have those benchmarks, even though they have a
Mm.
pool of franchisees that they could pull that data from and create those benchmarks from that would give
Yeah.
so much guidance to franchisees if they knew. I remember specifically when I first started my kickboxing gyms. That was the
Mm-hmm.
franchise that I owned.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in month 1, and this was, I'm gonna date myself, but this was pre-digital ads on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So everything had to be done organically online to pull in customers, and we had
Mm-hmm.
35 signups on day 1. I'll never
Wow.
forget, 35. And I was like, "All right, I'm excited about 35. Should I be excited about 35? Is 35 good? Like,
Mm-hmm.
should we have 75 and we only had
Yeah.
35?" Like, I have no idea. And my
Mm-hmm.
sister ended up, buying a franchise in the same brand, and
Mm-hmm.
she opened her franchise 2 weeks later, 4 hours away across the state. And literally, our way of benchmarking was to call each other up every week and
Mm.
say, "Where are you at?" And then I would
Mm.
say, "Yep, that's about what we had 2 weeks ago. So if we're both on the same trajectory, we must at least be average." Right? And, but it would have been so, so helpful where my franchisor had access to all of that data that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't have had someone, if they wouldn't have been working with someone like you who said, "Hey,
Mm.
let's take all the data and let's put it together and figure out how to get these average unit volumes up by providing the data to the franchisees."
Yeah. 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 Exactly. I'm curious, did getting that feedback from your sister give you any insights into your business that changed how you acted or what you focused on?
No, because it reinforced that it must be good, right? Or it
Mhm.
must be average. So, and the other thing with franchising is that the franchisor is giving you, quote, a playbook, right?
Mhm.
If you do these things, you will be
Mm.
successful. And that's kind of
Okay.
the party line. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm doing the things,
Mhm.
but there's no real definition of success. And I think that
Mm.
that's where things get a little muddy because the franchisor's definition of success might be a profitable unit. My
Mhm.
definition of success was I want to create wealth. I don't want to create a job that pays me well. I want to,
Mm.
not work in the business every day, and I want to have a life that I couldn't have being an attorney. And because I
Yeah.
could go be an attorney and earn a high salary, and I wasn't,
Mhm.
wanting that.
Mhm.
So I think that that contributes is that there's not even an agreement on what the long term
Mm.
benchmark is or what is the ultimate benchmark we're trying to achieve. So you
Mhm.
can't work backwards from it either.
Mhm.
And for us, we just kept going. And then after our 3rd month, we were cash flow positive.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so then we were able to hire. And then, but for me, it was about 18 months in of that like period of time that we were talking about earlier, where It's a little bit, I don't know. Is this good? Is this bad? We're supposed to
Mm,
open more, so I'll just keep moving forward. And
mm-hmm,
then I actually realized, um, well, I was very aware that there was definitely business knowledge I was missing, and I could feel that it
mm-hmm,
was in the finance arena, and I craved it, but I didn't know where to find someone like you. I didn't know where to
mm-hmm.
find the right help that could fill in the gaps of what I didn't know I didn't know. And
Right,
so I was
right.
lucky enough to find an executive coach who started to help me put those pieces together. And then from
Mm,
there, we continued to build. And ultimately, we had 4 locations and then built them to a successful
yeah,
exit. But
interesting.
I do remember those early days of just it being a bit of a mystery and kind of like holding on for dear life and trying to get feedback from unreliable sources.
Mm. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, it sounds like, yeah, in my space, we're relatively blessed in terms of data and information. So, lucky enough to have comparables and benchmarks based on, thousands of companies in my industry and can see things like, the net to gross revenue ratio. I can see COGS as a percentage sales. I can see overheads. I can see marketing. I can see repeat purchase rates. Like, what do they typically average out for, a food business versus a leisure and lifestyle business or a home and garden business? um, Sounds like there could be an opportunity there for the franchising space to pull together some data like that. Another thing that I do actually, which could have an interesting application in your world, is I run a small mastermind group with a bunch of my retainer clients who are all founders. It's all under the protection of an NDA. And part of the deal is that they're all opting into sharing their data with the rest of the group. Now, I do this in a way so that no one can, see or decipher how big each other's businesses are. So I'm not showing like, dollar million revenue or dollar million profit. But what I am showing is the numbers in on a ratio or metric basis. So rather than show, how much revenue, I'll look at, all right, what is everyone's year on year revenue growth, for example. Rather than show, what's your cost of goods sold, I'll show COGS as a percentage of revenue, right? So what we do is bring these founders together. I put together a bunch of charts and data, and then we basically use that as a conversation starter. So we might be looking at a chart and you happen to have, the best number in the group. And I'll say, hey, April, like your business is actually looking really good here. I can see that you've reduced your COGS over the last 2 years. You now have the lowest COGS of everyone in the group. Can you maybe share with the other founders here? Like, how did you do that? What are some of the strategies or techniques that you employed to get there? But maybe Bill has got, a terrible number. And I also work with Bill, one on one. And I say, hey, Bill, like, I know this is something you've been struggling with and you've tried a couple of things already that haven't worked out. Do you want to ask anyone else here in the group, like, how they're managing it? And so, what you can kind of do here is like facilitate insights and best practices between, these business owners. And I set these groups up in a way such that no one is a direct competitor, like no one's selling, exactly the same product or same space, but they're all similar enough that we can get insights and the perspective is still useful.
Yeah, that's great. That might be really helpful for some of these founders that
Mm,
are in the franchising space too. Something
hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, well, this has been a really great conversation, Nate. I've enjoyed talking with you and kind of diving
Likewise.
into the psyche around business numbers that we see for small business owners, and then how and when to leverage someone like you. I think just knowing that someone like you is out there and that this is
Hmm.
normal. Those are normal growth pains, and there is help that
Yeah.
is specialized that can help you to the next level. That's
Hmm.
invaluable for people.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's an enjoyable space to work in, and I'm sure for the folks listening, if they look around and ask for recommendations and referrals, they'll be able to find someone who has expertise and specializes in whatever product or industry that they might be operating in. But yeah, I mean, I guess the way I would encourage people to think about this is like, yes, there is a cost to getting any sort of coach, advice, advisor to work with you. But if that person can help you get focused on the right priorities in the business, and if that person can help identify what is the 80 or 90% of noise and nonsense that's occupying your time that you shouldn't be wasting time on. And if that person can help you identify growth opportunities in your business that, if pursued, could make you more likely to achieve your financial goals, whatever they are, then like the ROI on that can be freaking phenomenal.
Yeah. And I mean, it amazes me all the time, especially I think franchising is a really great example of this, because people will invest in the franchise and upfront that could be anywhere from, on the very, very, very low end, it might be $75,000 upfront investment.
mm-hmm,
On the high end,
mm-hmm,
it's millions of dollar investment for
mm,
that initial investment to
mm-hmm,
have the right to open your business. That's all it is just to
mm-hmm,
have the
mm-hmm.
right to open the business. And then
Yep.
once they're operating and they realize they need help, suddenly it's like, well, but I don't know if I could afford that. It's like, are you going to, your initial investment and all of the time, money and energy, sweat, blood and tears that you've put in since that is actually at risk.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to forfeit all of that because you're afraid to invest in the right help when you need it.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Very well said.
Yeah. Well, again, it's been a pleasure. How do people get in touch with you if they are looking, if they're in the e-commerce space looking for the next phase of their business, phase 3 and above?
Yeah. Well, two best ways to track me down are firstly on LinkedIn. Be posting there pretty frequently. My name again is Nate Littlewood. Should be relatively easy to find. The other way you can get hold of me is through the website, which is futurereadycfo.com.
Amazing. Well, if you haven't looked at your numbers, we encourage you to do so and get some clarity around them so that you can be a success like Nate mentioned.
Exactly. Thanks so much, April.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ask April Porter podcast. If you found value in today's episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow franchisees and small business owners. To access the resources I mentioned during this episode, check out our show notes.